Looking for ways to boost creativity, collaboration, and a sense of belonging in your music class? Songwriting might be the answer. In today's interview, we'll explore what this can look like in the music classroom. Welcome to Pass the Baton, empowering students in music education. Here, we amplify the voices of music teachers around the world who are passing the baton and creating environments where the music students are empowered. Together, we can help students transform from passive consumers to vibrant creatives. Welcome back to the Pass the Baton podcast. I'm Kathryn Finch.
And I'm Theresa Hoover. We are so glad to be with you today. Thanks for tuning in. Oh, Kathryn, we are back recording again. I know I'm on spring break. You're almost there.
Almost there.
Yeah, but today's interview was an exciting one. I feel real fortunate with my grad school work to have met some really incredible people. And today's guest is no exception. Someone that I am in class with on a regular basis, just incredible music educator and someone who's really passionate about what they do. And that happens to be songwriting.
Yeah. It was really great to hear him today and just all the ideas. I'm sitting here thinking, like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do tomorrow?
Yeah, because that's it. Yeah. There's definitely practical and actionable things that you will be able to start implementing in your classroom. It's perfect. Yeah. So, well, before we get to that, though, Alex, this interview will be here in a moment. Remember, the show notes are going to be in the podcast player. They're going to be right below the video in YouTube. And Alex has some really great links. So make sure you check out those show notes so you can get those links. And if you like the interview, please, we say this every week, but we'll say it one more time. Please consider subscribing, following, leave us a review. We've gotten some new reviews lately, which has been really fun. So you can do that in whatever, whatever platform you're using. There's some way to do one of those many things.
Yeah. Yeah, they're really helpful. And then in addition, we do have that buy me a coffee site. So for the less than a cup of coffee, you can send some support to help us with the podcast, which is great.
Yep. All right, let's get to it. Okay, welcome back. We are excited to be joined by our guest today, Alex Adams. Alex, thanks for joining us.
Howdy, I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah, this is exciting. Alex and I, we are both at ASU in the graduate program, and we are on spring break. Woo!
You can tell by my banana shirt.
Oh, is that what happens on spring break? You wear
the you go bananas.
Nice. Love it.
Well, I'm 2 weeks out for spring break, so I am jealous, but I'm glad you guys are getting some time off for sure. Do you mind introducing yourself a little bit more and telling us about your background and your current role in education?
Yeah. I'm Alex Adams. I'm a music teacher. I have about 15 years experience in both private studio and public school teaching. I'm from Maine, where I taught in a very small school. It was in fact called Jordan Small School. It was teeny tiny. And I did 5 through 8, everything except orchestra. I had a co-teacher who taught orchestra, so I would teach band, chorus, guitar, general music, music technology, rock band, jazz band, all at that teeny tiny school. And then I'm also a teaching artist with the Documentary Songwriters organization, which is an organization that takes lived experiences and turns them into what are called documentary songs, which are true songs that relate that experience. And I, as we discussed, am currently working toward a PhD in music learning and teaching at Arizona State University with Theresa.
Yeah, congrats.
I think right now I'm teaching right now I'm teaching a class at ASU called Digital and Hybrid Lab, where I focus on music technology and pedagogy and help music education students think of themselves as hyphenated musicians, like musicians who are also producers and recording engineers and beat makers and all of those things, in addition to being sort of conservatory trained music educators. And part of that is songwriting.
Yay. Because and on the side, you're also teaching them how to be teachers.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, a little bit.
there's some of that thrown in there.
When they're doing well, that's me. When it's everybody else,
All right. Well, you mentioned songwriting.
Yeah.
And that's more or less what we're here to talk about today. So like, where did that come from? I don't think we've had anybody talk about songwriting on the podcast before.
So songwriting for me comes from a few different places. So I'm a guitar player, and my father is a bass player. He's been in bands my whole life and been playing everything from Zydeco to punk music to function bands that are covering pop tunes. And so I was surrounded by musicians my whole life, and writing songs was just something that you did as part of like being a music, like it was just a normal thing to do. So there have always been people in my life writing songs. I started writing songs pretty much as soon as I started playing an instrument. Um, and they weren't any good, and I don't remember any of them, but it was a big part of why I was playing music, was to be able to communicate. Um, and then through my teaching, I studied with Michelle Kashub at the University of Southern Maine, who is really prominent in composition in music education. So there are sort of natural overlap. There is some sort of natural overlap between the composition style of Michelle Kashub and my own personal experience writing songs in sort of a pop music style. And then after that, after I graduated and I started writing songs with kids, I became a teaching artist with documentary songwriting. So I was then using documentary songwriting inside the classroom to write songs that were directly reflective of my students' experiences. And then we would write them in class, and then we would learn them in the rock band after school, and then we would perform them for the parents at the concert. So that's sort of how I came into songwriting as a kid, and then brought songwriting into my classroom. And it's been really great. Students like to write songs. They like to make things. And it's been really fantastic for connecting not only like elements of music and the music teachery stuff, but also connecting music into their lives, because they're writing songs both from their experience and from their imagination, but they belong to them. And so that's a little bit of the songwriting stuff.
Wow. There's so much that I'm thinking about right now. So first of all, I'm thinking back to like my own upbringing as a musician, and I don't remember ever writing songs. I just don't have any memory of it. Like, I don't know that was part of my own music education. So hearing you talk about how that was part of yours, and then how you're really like encouraging your students to have that as part of their lives, I think is incredible. Kathryn, what about you? Like, can you think about?
That's so funny, because I was thinking when you were talking to Alex, like, oh my gosh, I was that kid too. I wrote a lot of songs on my own. But it was just that, on my own. But I guess in high school, I had wonderful music educators, and I got to take like an extra class that was a theory one, so it was a super small class, and a conducting one. But I think the theory one got me going on like being able to write music on my own. And so that's so yes. So Mr. Lindsay did have us write music, and we did write a couple of things. And actually one thing he had me do, which has just worked out because it was like a Shakespeare play. Anyways, there was that we needed some like simple like Renaissance music, right? So it's just like open fifths. So it was like perfect for like, oh, you're starting out too. So anyways, I made something for that, and we got to use it and play it in the play, which was kind of cool. So I did have some of that there, but what I remember is that I loved doing that at home and making music. Loved it.
One of the things that's really interesting about songwriting, and this kind of bridges over to like popular music education, is what is the culture of music for kids? Like, what is the culture of music that they exist in? And what is the culture of music that we have in school? So for me, I was never in school music. I took a theory class in high school. I sang in like a semi-professional regional boy choir from 4th grade until 10th grade. So I could read music and I could sing, but that wasn't part of my musical life at school. And the things that I would do in my musical life, like learning the guitar, playing in bands, writing songs, those were all things that were outside of the school music tradition. And the teachers that I had in school, with like one notable exception, were not really interested in that. It was much more understanding not music as like a dialogue that you were in or part of your culture that you could be part of a creating, or that you could create your own part of. It was much more about music is dots. And once you know the dots, then you're music.
Mm.
And so it would be very frustrating to me because I would come into places where people were supposed to be the music people and try to talk to them, and no one could talk to me. Which is part of why I really believe in bringing creative, effective, student-centered learning through songwriting into the classroom. I think it's super important because most of the music that people listen to in their lives are songs. Like, I don't know if you've seen the top 40 for wind band recently, but like most of the music that most of the people interact with every day are some kind of vocal music that is accompanied in a pop form, regardless of what that is, right? So teaching our students to be conversant, fluent in that language is super empowering to them because it allows them to engage their own cultures and their own musics that they're hearing outside of our classrooms on a much more deeper level, because they can start to understand how these things are put together, how they affect me, and what would I want to say if I were to make one. Yeah. So the musical culture piece is really a big piece for me personally. And it can also be a big piece for folks in their school buildings. So like one of the things that I did with my students is I used a documentary songwriting technique to write some songs with students. And one of them was a song called Where Did Henry Go?, which was based on a story that one of my students told about a story they had been told by their parents about a time when they were a baby and they were by a road and they were put down and their parent looked away for a second and all of a sudden they were in the road and their dad jumped in front of a Jeep to push them out of the way of the Jeep and got hit by a Jeep. And it was very dramatic story. We turned that into a song. Another student created a melody for it. We worked together to create a harmony. We taught it to the rock band, and then we sang it back to our community, which included his parents,
who were probably mortified.
Right. Before I did send it beforehand, and I was like, hey, you know, his mom sent me back a very nice message that said that was the most stressful day of my life, but the song's great. But we sang it back to, 300 people in a tiny town. And all of a sudden we've created this bond of community between us based on this musical work, which is really what I think the heart of being musical is about. It's about creating that bridge, building community, and sharing experience. Mm-hmm. And making that the culture of your building has a knock-on effect. So like after that, other students would say, oh, I want to do a song. I have this thing that I want to turn into. Can you do my? And so it builds on itself.
Yeah. That's, again, you're talking and just so many things that I keep thinking, oh yeah.
Don't be afraid to stop me, because I'll just
no. I'm not going to stop you. It's all such important stuff. I think what I'm also like hearing, so we're talking about, making the music room and making school music a place for all music, right? Not just the band, orchestra, chorus, right? That is traditionally there, but we're really thinking that all music belongs in schools, what you're telling me. And we're helping kids see themselves in that music. And I think that's so important. Kathryn and I talk about that stuff a lot. Just, is what we're doing in the music program relevant to the kids who are in the program, or is it only relevant to me because I love wind band, right? And admittedly, I obviously love a lot of other music as well. So I think what you're talking about, for me, I'm just seeing how we're making this musical experience relevant to everybody. And because you also mentioned how personal it is. So it's not even me saying like this specific, I don't know, chord progression, style, whatever is what we're going to write. It sounds like it's very open. Am I understanding that?
Yeah. So there are a couple of things that you said that I'm thinking about now. Mutual Appreciation Society over here.
Yeah.
So one of the things was about seeing yourself in the music program. And one of the things that, or seeing yourself in the music, one of the things I always try to think about when I think about any music is that all music is the product of people in a place at a time for a purpose, right? All music is made by people. I mean, you could make a case, but right now I'm going to say people is where I draw the line. They're all going to be in a place. It's going to be at a time, and it's going to be for a purpose. So who are the people that are making music in the room right now? And why are we doing it? And who are the people that are in your headphones? Where were they? Why were they making that music? And if we can't get our students to see themselves as the people who get to make the music where they are, when they are, like, to me, that's a really dangerous thing, because eventually those people are going to go vote in their town elections and music education will not be supported. Like, if people can't see themselves in the music, not only are they unable to participate in their musical culture, but it has real material effects. Mm-hmm. Like, again, not to bring it back to that concert, but like after that concert, I had like 200 people who I could call who would show up for me because they immediately understood the value of what was happening, because I was speaking to them in a musical way that they could understand. I mean, I wasn't speaking to them, the students were speaking to them, but we were speaking to them in a way they could understand, because they understood how to listen to that song and they could be affected by it and they could feel the relation. So seeing yourself in the music is really important. Seeing your community in the music is really important. As for the openness, songwriting in classrooms can look like a lot of different things. It can look like a lot of different things. And one of the biggest things to think about if you're going to do it, and I highly suggest everybody does, that's sort of my deal right now. So everybody go do it right now. I'll wait until the end of the podcast and then go do it.
Yeah.
But it can take a bunch of different forms. And like anything in music education, you have to think about like your goals and your limitations. Like, what are our goals and what kind of limitations am I going to put in there? And what kind of scaffolding am I going to do? So sometimes people try to engage in songwriting and it sputters out because there's too few limitations. It's too open and free. It's the terror of the blank page. Like, if I looked at Kathryn right now and I said, Kathryn, write me a song. Right? It's nerve-wracking. You don't know where to start. Yeah. Other times it can be too prescriptive, right? So if I said, we are going to write a song, it is going to use 2 notes. It is going to be about the upcoming holiday, whatever that holiday is. It's going to be about April Fool's Day. And you are going to finish these 4 sentence stems. And then you are going to play for me your 2-pitch April Fool's Day sentence stem filler outer version of a song. That might be too prescriptive, but it also might be exactly right for first grade. So like, that's an example that I pulled from, I think it's the YouTube channel, A Different Music Teacher has an excellent exercise that's targeted at K1, K2 that I absolutely love. But if I was doing that in high school, and I use that same approach, that's too prescribed. The students aren't going to get anything out of it. You're going to get a bunch of identical products because you've limited the process so heavily. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that we want to keep in mind when we engage in songwriting in our classrooms is like, what's developmentally appropriate, of course, what's culturally responsive in my area, right? So like, where I was in Maine was a rural district. Country music was like the number 1, rock music was number 2. So we wrote a bunch of country and rock songs, but that might not be the same where you are. If I was writing in high schools right now, I might be looking at like norms of corrido music and looking to my students to educate me about the music they're listening to, and then figuring out how to write in those styles. You want to be using the music that is in your student's life. So you want developmentally appropriate, culturally responsive, and then you want to think about, where are you placing the goal? So is the goal an easy success early on? Is it a productive challenge? How much experience do we have? All of those kind of normal teacher questions play into how you engage in songwriting. So one of the ways that I like to start is by composing the worst song in the world. So will you compose the worst song in the world with me?
Yeah.
Sure.
So the reason I do the worst song in the world first is because when you're writing something, anything, you're creating a creative product and it's going to be in front of other people. That can be really nerve-wracking, right?
Yeah.
Like if I asked you to sing me a song that you wrote, even if it's not a song that is about your personal experience, it's still something you wrote. And you're still opening yourself up to judgment. So what I like to do is I like to start by incentivizing failure, because no matter what you do after this point, it is not going to be as bad as the worst song in the world. And we already wrote that. So at worst, it's the second worst song ever written. And like, I don't know, if I had the second worst song ever written, I might put that on my resume. So what we're going to do is we're going to write the worst song ever written. And so one of the things I would ask my students is I would say, okay, well, what's a song? What is in a song? So you are my students for the purpose of this exercise. So what's in a song? Give me one thing that's in a song.
Melody.
Okay, so we're going to have a melody, but it's going to be the most boring version of a melody, so we can only have one note. What else is in the song? That's okay. Well, here, let me.
There's like a little form, I guess, some kind of pattern.
There's some kind of pattern. It's going to be the most boring pattern. There's only one thing that's going to happen.
Okay.
Okay. So I'll sing you a song. Oh, what might be in a song if I was going to sing you a song?
A
Words?
vocal?
Yeah, there's going to be words and vocals, right? But there's only going to be one word and one pitch and one rhythm. So now I just need a word. What's a word? Oh, okay. So we have O. Our word is O. What's a good pitch? Is this a good pitch? We'll start there. It's a pitch. O. How long is our O? Is it O or is it O? Which one is it?
It's long.
Is it long?
Yeah.
It's long. So how long is it? Could you sing it for me?
Oh, that long.
Okay. So this is world premiere, everybody. Should there be harmony, or is harmony too interesting? Should we have something behind it? So here's our song. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, 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 oh. I will not continue that any longer.
You know what you just wrote? You just wrote line number 1 in the beginning band method book. Don't tell the method book writers I said that. But
we could do a big band arrangement of the worst song in the world so fast. So we have the worst or most boring song in the world, and it's done. But now what I'll talk about with my students, they'll say, okay, well, in doing that, we identified a whole bunch of stuff, right? We've got a melody. Our melody was oh or oh. We had words. We had oh. We had some kind of form. It was just that over and over again. There was nothing that contrasted with it. So like, if we wanted to make the second worst song in the world, what could we do? Could we change some of those things? And then you can start talking about elements. And this is one approach. This is an approach that's really comfortable for a lot of music teachers, because we're really comfortable talking about elements of music. You know, there's rhythm, there's voice. You're not thinking about pop form necessarily yet. You're not trying to tear anything out. But this is an example of using a really defined activity to then open up into possibilities. So what you do is you say, okay, now we have the worst song in the world. Now what I want you to do in small groups is you all have to compose the second worst song in the world. Now you get 2 choices. You have 2 notes, 2 words. One of them has to be, oh, because that's where we're starting at. So whatever you're like, and so like the kids, this is probably pitched towards younger middle school, maybe elementary school, because that's where my heart is. But one of the things you can do there is you then expand and you start talking about making intentional creative choices. Mm-hmm. And these intentional creative choices that you're making aren't necessarily tied to your artistic ability. They're not necessarily tied to your musical knowledge. You're just making choices and playing. Mm-hmm. And that is sort of the best way in to songwriting that I have found. I think that opening up and playing in the space is so useful. And it goes from highly scaffolded, just one thing, to slightly less scaffolded, 2 things, but you get to choose one of them, to now could you write a song that's a whole line? What happens if we all write a song that's about the same thing, but it's just 1 line long? How many different lines do we get? Oh, all of a sudden we have 22 different lines. Do you think we could make a song out of 22 different sentences? I think we could probably find a verse in there. And then you can start talking about forms and how things relate and how we thought about things and what kinds of contours are we hearing in the melodies. Like, are there big high note? Like, it gives you all of these ways to relate both to popular music, song forms, creativity that are not limited by musical ability or age or complexity, but are directly related to experience, play, and the students driving the bus. And you're still setting the boundary, right? You're still creating the sandbox for us to play in. But that sandbox is going to get progressively bigger as we go on. And like, you don't have to base your entire music room around songwriting. I didn't do that. I wouldn't expect you to do that. But it can be cyclical. So like, you can start your unit and you can have a little songwriting component. And then the next unit you start, you can relate back and do a little more complex songwriting. You can keep building it because there's no one way to do songwriting and there's no one way to teach songwriting. It's just like being a music teacher in a bunch of different venues, right? We all use our musical skills. We use our teaching skills. We use our, to quote Lee Schulman, we use our pedagogical content knowledge and reasoning. I'm paying a lot for this degree, so I'm going to use it at every opportunity. But pedagogical content knowledge and reasoning and action, we use all of those things, right? So when we develop songwriting skills, we're just developing a new toolkit that we can incorporate all of that knowledge into. So there's a lot of different ways that we can do that. And it can look really different from teacher to teacher, depending on the goal, the age group, and the limitations that we put in. And there's a couple of different things to think about too, when it comes to songwriting. A couple of things that I want to make sure that I say out loud before I forget to. In popular culture, there's this idea that all songs are like heartfelt self-disclosure. Like everyone is Adele or Taylor Swift, right? Like we're all singing about our deepest heartbreaks and our personal truths. That's something that Joe Bennett calls romantic misconception or non sequitur, romantic non sequitur, which is the idea that we feel songs when we hear them very deeply. So we feel like we have to write them from that same deep place. But we don't have to do that. We can write songs as a craft, an exercise of imagination, rather than pulling it into our deepest selves. And like, I understand why we feel this with music, because music feels so personal when we listen to it. But in no other creative genre do we really feel that way. Like, I don't think Timothée Chalamet is actually on the planet Dune. I understand that it's made up and that people have a craft of doing this thing, and it doesn't reduce my ability to understand and enjoy the film in the same way that understanding the craft of songwriting doesn't reduce your ability to connect or meaningfully engage with songs. It's important to recognize that, especially if you're working with folks who are adolescents, who are going through this huge time of self-discovery. If we don't introduce to them that songs can be made up and they don't have to be about your deepest, darkest truths, you might be asking a student, without realizing it, you might be asking them for like self-disclosure. Mm-hmm. And it might not be safe for them to do that. So it's important when you're talking about songwriting for me, at least, I will say for me, I'll position myself here. It's important for me to talk to people about, well, if we're writing a song that's based on your personal experience, like a documentary song, which is explicitly based on personal experience, I always introduce that with, I do not want to hear your deepest, darkest secrets. I want you to tell me only things that you are comfortable telling people. It can be about you and your life. It can be important to you, but it doesn't have to be your deepest, darkest truth. It doesn't have to be reflective of you. It can be something as silly as, I wrote a song with a student about taking their cat George for a walk. And they saw a pit bull, and the pit bull got out and chased George and my student, and they ended up on the roof of a car, screaming, and somebody came out and got their dog, and it was a scary experience for her. And we wrote a country song, it had a great first line, which was, "It wasn't funny at the time." So like, we write these things and they are communicative, but they don't have to be disclosure. And so it's really important to recognize that, because just because we listen to songs and we feel like they touch our hearts doesn't mean that every song we write has to be from our hearts. There are a couple of really good examples of this. I don't know if either of you have ever listened to Link Wray and the Raymen. Link Wray is sort of a really important rock and roll guitarist, indigenous person, wrote the song Rumble, which is an early rock and roll instrumental that was banned. It was banned because it was going to corrupt the youth.
Oh,
it was an instrumental that was going to corrupt the youth. Do you know how corrupting you have to be? I would play that for my middle schoolers, and they would be like, "I don't feel corrupted." But he wrote another song called Flying Saucer Rock and Roll. I don't think a flying saucer came down and saw him. And I don't think the crazy beat of the aliens really knocked him dead. So like, you can have imagination and play, and that's totally fine. You can write a song about anything. Sorry, I went on and on about that, but it's a really prevalent idea, because songwriters tend to promote that idea, because if they told you anybody could do it, anybody would be doing it. All right. And then I would talk about just one other thing about doing songwriting. Think about what your goals are. So like, when I'm songwriting with students, my goals are not to produce an amazing song. We have created some amazing songs that I really like. But the goal is to empower the students to have a creative tool at their disposal. So the first time you do anything is never going to be your best time. It just isn't. And so when I approach students to do songwriting, I'm not expecting earth-shaking work. I'm expecting some kind of creative intention matched with some kind of product, and then we can talk about it and we can refine it over time. But having that in your head as a teacher is really important, and introducing that to your students is also important too. To say like, we already wrote the worst song in the world, and we wrote the second worst song in the world, and we wrote the third worst song in the world. And now I'm going to ask you to write a song, and I'm going to help you write this song. And it probably won't be the fourth worst song in the world, but it's probably not going to be on the radio, but maybe we'll see what develops. And thinking in your teacher brain about what kind of musical goals you're shooting for, what kind of expressive goals you're shooting for, what kind of effective connection you're shooting for, what kind of artistic intention you're shooting for in the lesson design part is super important, because you might structure your instruction and activity in different ways. Like if I was really interested in talking about effective with an A connection in music, we might listen to a bunch of songs that are, about being happy. Like we might listen to Pharrell Williams' Happy. We might listen to Justin Timberlake's, what's the one from the Trolls movie that I can't remember right now? Can't Stop the Feeling.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We might talk about that, and we might talk about the music and the feeling, and then we might try to make music with feeling. And so if the most important thing is that it feels happy to us and we can explain it, I'm not going to be asking them to talk to me about major chords. I'm going to be asking them to talk to me about what sounds are we using to get to this feeling. If I'm thinking about major chord progressions, I might design a different thing. I might say, if we're trying to learn what a 1-4-5 progression is, I might say, we're going to write a song about a 1-4-5 that has a 1-4-5 in it. It can be just about anything. But afterwards, I might ask, hey, why did you choose that thing? How is it reflected in your 1-4-5? So like, how did that feel like that to you? You can still make the effective connection, but it's not the main event. So thinking about that in your teacher hat is kind of important, because it allows you to develop some other things. Yeah. And then the last thing is how you choose to preserve your songwriting. One thing that I will talk about a little bit is in popular music, the score is not the text, right? So in band, orchestra, chorus, we think about our music is the text, right? I think do I have an octavo here? I do. It's from AZMEA. I haven't even opened it yet. I think it's all octavos. Let's see. It is. Look. I have found, look, it's the music.
It's the music. You have it. You have music in your hands.
Right. So this is the music. And now we know that I'm being facetious and that the music is really the wiggling of the air that we do with our voices, right? When we sing this piece of music. But practically, this is where the music, oh, sorry, I shouldn't block my voice because there's a microphone right there. Practically, this is sort of where the music lives when we're not playing with it, right? It lives on the page. In popular music, it doesn't really live on the page. It lives in a recording somewhere. So one of the things I do with my students is I don't ask them to compose written notation. I'll ask for maybe some idiosyncratic notation if they want it, but by and large, I use audio recording as a way to preserve this stuff because, oh, that's the other thing I meant to talk about. Your students' skills don't necessarily represent their intention, right? So like if you have a fourth grader, right? They've probably listened to pop music with their family since they attained consciousness. They have all of those years of auditory experience in their brains. They know what those things sound like. They know what a song is supposed to sound like, but they're not going to have the skills to realize that sound, right? The audiation and the skills don't match. What a teacher can do in that situation is act as a session musician and help to bring that out of them. So they get to direct me. So like when I write songs with students who are not instrumentalists or don't have a lot of experience, what we'll do is we'll talk back and forth in like onomatopoetic speech. Have you ever heard two drummers talk to each other?
Yes.
No, it's like a not a like that. We'll talk back and forth. They'll use effective words and I'll play things for them and they'll tell me if I'm right. So like, if they're like, oh, I need something that sounds like, I don't know, a haunted house, you know, I'll be like, is that haunted enough? Is that haunted? We share a musical culture, right? Of popular music, generally. We've listened to popular music. And there are all of these effective ways we can talk about popular music with our students where we can act as the musical skill and they can act as the intent and we can come together to create something. Because if I'm going to gate off their ability to create by their ability to engage in like playing an instrument, then I'm not actually engaging their effective musical intention. I'm really looking at their ability to play an instrument or to sing a song. In songwriting, I'm more interested in what do they hear in here and how do we communicate it together? The student really becomes the driver, and that can be a new position for a lot of teachers. It means that you have to be responsive and broad and not be afraid to try things and have them go wrong. So if a student asks for a haunted house and I play, you know, and they go, that doesn't sound super haunted to me. I can go, does that sound haunted? And they'll be like, maybe it sounds a little better. I don't know though. It should sound like, I don't know, like spookier. And then you're stuck as a teacher going, how do I, what does spooky mean? I don't know about you, but nowhere in my music theory class did anybody go, listen, when you want spooky, it's these notes. These are the spooky notes.
Right.
So it requires us as teachers not only to decenter ourselves as the agent driving the bus of the classroom, it also asks us to engage in music in a different way that is much more of a dialogue. We're modeling that dialogue as we teach songwriting.
Stay tuned for the next episode where Alex shares some free materials and more information about how to dive deeper into songwriting.
If you liked today's episode, you will love the passthebatonbook.com website, where you can find free resources, coaching services, and how to support Pass the Baton. Speaking of support, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. Thanks again for listening.